Hey watch friends, today we're going to be checking out the latest creation from one of my favorite brands. This is the Direnzo DRZ06 Wandering Star. This is going to be launching directly on their website for pre-order on February 10th of 2024, and I'll of course have a link down in the video description if you care to check that out. Today we're going to be looking at the prototype. However, if you saw that banner there, they do intend to send me a production version, and I always of course want to be upfront about that. Additionally, in case you missed it, I did already feature an unboxing, so you can look at the packaging, how it ships, all that kind of good stuff. So with that, we'll just go ahead and dive straight into the specs on this. This comes standard like the other Direnzo watches with a 2-year warranty. The case, measured roughly from the 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock position, is coming in at 37.9 millimeters. The bezel steps down almost exactly 1 millimeter and is coming in dead on at 37 millimeters. The lugs are a standard 20 millimeters in size. However, as you can see, just like the 02R Aerolite that we looked at, you can see that this has a quasi-integrated style bracelet, so that kicks out to 28.5 millimeters to align with the case contours. The lug-to-lug is 45.5 millimeters. The total thickness is slightly thinner than the Aerolite, coming in at 10.9 millimeters, and that is including that flat sapphire crystal, which does include inner AR coating, just like the other Direnzos. The movement varies from their typical, which is the Sellita SW200. This one actually features the Sellita SW216. While that's going to be similar to the SW200, it is a pricier movement, and what that does is that actually changes from an automatic to a manual, so this is going to be a hand wind movement. It's still going to be the elaborate grade. And this does actually feature, just like the SW200, it does have hacking, so when you pull that out, that sub-dial disc there will stop. The power reserve is going to be around 38 hours and 28,800 beats per hour, similar to the SW200. So overall, spec-wise, changing out the automatic for a manual wind, but otherwise pretty similar, still the ankle block protection, all that kind of good stuff. As far as the water resistance, this is coming in at 100 meters or 10 atmospheres of water resistance. The weight, there's actually 2 options that you have available. So you can order this either on the bracelet or you can order it on one of these 2 straps. There's a light brown as well as a black version that's available. The weight on the bracelet, size to my 6.5-inch wrist, is coming in at roughly 142.6 grams. On the straps, that takes it down significantly to 85.8 grams, so big difference there. In terms of pricing, it's converted to US dollars, but as of time of recording, it's going to be launching at around $860 on the leather strap or around $900 on this bracelet. And we'll talk about those details. You can actually purchase these separately as well, so they'll be available if you want to pick one up after the fact. But additionally, one thing that's cool, and we talked about in the unboxing, is this bracelet as well as these leather straps are designed to fit perfectly with the 02R Aerolite also. So if you already have the bracelet from that and you want to use that, you can carry over if you want to order on a strap, or similarly, if you want to put those on a strap, you have the custom fit and options available. So now that we have that out of the way, let's go ahead and take a better look at this watch and get an idea as to what it's like to live with. So first, for the colors. This is available in 3 different colors. There's the green that we're looking at today. There's additionally a black, and then there's a teal blue that to my eye is reminiscent of the original Mondial, the DRZ04. So that's great to see that color make a comeback. Each of these dials is going to have that signature bowl shape, which has really become one of my favorite things about the Direnzo models. It's just that nice milled out bowl shape, one-piece construction, really gorgeous design there. The dial pattern is going to be a circular brush, so it is relatively subtle in many lighting conditions. However, it really does pick up, so you notice that significantly as you move it around with the way that light will play across the dial. Additionally, there is a fume or gradient application, so it does get darker out towards the perimeter, where it fades almost to a complete black, though that is actually just a dark green, and you can notice that when the light hits it just right. The dial does have printing at the 12 o'clock position with the Direnzo logo, as well as their namesake and locale. And then additionally, you're going to notice one of the most signature features of this particular version is it has a sandwich dial application. And it's a very unique sandwich cutout for that. So you can see it's actually broken up with kind of hashes or bridges going across. So that's not a uniform cut out all the way around. That does actually break up through. And that'll be especially apparent when you look at the lume footage. Very, very neat. Really like that. One of the things with this particular green is it exhibits, and I tried to capture this in a lot of different lighting, huge color shift. So it is what they describe as like kind of an olive green. However, it sometimes exhibits more of like the tan or khaki color of the olive green, so you get a little more of that brownish hue that comes out of it. Sometimes it's a little more of the goldish. Sometimes it takes a very deep saturated green, especially from the extreme light angles. So really, really cool to see how much light play this has. And I found it to actually be surprisingly versatile. I like the fact that this is a more subdued green choice that they did, and I think it's in keeping with the dressier style of this watch, though it is perfect for casual usage as well. As far as the hardware, this has what I would describe as a sword style handset, and it is polished. If you notice down in the middle, you can see that there's a very nice clean application with the pinion cap, so it's just very well integrated across the board. But one of the things that makes this so unique is this is actually what they refer to as a mystery second. That's a throwback to, I believe, the 60s for that. And that specifically is at the 6 o'clock position, you can see there's a cutout for a subdial. But instead of having a traditional hand or having hashes, this actually has its namesake for the Wandering Star. It has that red dot there that's designed to be kind of a star floating around. So you can just watch that glide around as that disc rotates. Really cool feature there. But one of the biggest things with that is shifting over to the loom. You can see for the loom application, it performs very well. BGW9, the handsets glow brightly. Of course, the sandwich does as well. But one of the things that's so cool is they actually went with a full loom backdrop for that subdial disc. So instead of actually having the hand itself that's lit up, it's that backdrop, and you can see kind of the shadow or the negative space that is going around as that shifts through. Really cool effect. I like that quite a lot, and that's actually one of the most captivating times to check out this watch. Shifting over to the bezel. The bezel on this is somewhat similar in design, and we'll look at the 02R, but it's similar in design to that. However, it is much thinner. So by that, you can see that this is a fixed bezel construction, just like the 02R was. And it does additionally have that undercut and a similar finishing, but it's very, very thin for that, has a very thin polished lip, and then additionally it does have that circular brushing that applies to really break things up, and I think keeps that somewhat tulle, somewhat dressy kind of vibe to it. It has a really subtle slope as it goes up to that crystal, so it's not flat, and I think that visually gives a nice look for it, but it's not too aggressive or extreme either because it is such a thin bezel overall. Shifting over to the case. The case on this is just like the 02R, is 316L stainless steel. It additionally, though, has a hardened coating applied just like the 02R did, and that's going to be excellent, especially with having so much polish as this does on the side. That does carry over to the bracelet as well, and then clasp and all that stuff that we'll look at. But as you can see here, this really shifts, so it has very swooping curves, especially as you look out from this silhouette profile. I love the way that just contours down in those lugs, and the way that just all flows together. It is such a gorgeous design. Really does, to me, give that kind of automotive vibe of just the flowing, gliding lines. It additionally, though, does have this milled out cut that you can prominently see featured along the case side. And that keeps not only from having that slab kind of appearance, but just really adds a lot of visual interest. Nice smooth milling lines through there. It is kind of like a blasted texture in the middle of that, as you can see in that cutout itself. But those unique touches carry over. As you can see, it shifts. So we went from polish to blasted, then you have brushed here. But let's check out these lugs. This is one of the most unique things about this watch, and let's check it out from different angles. You can see the lugs themselves are unlike anything I've ever seen. They actually cut in, so they're kind of a reverse milled or reverse cut into that, where they actually cut into the watch. So they, of course, protrude out. But then instead of just having chamfer cuts, they actually have kind of flowing curves all the way around, and it does have a polish application. So you can see it's kind of undercut, almost captures kind of the concave shape that we saw in the 02R on the side, but now it's in between the lugs. Really gives a neat visual effect. We'll come back to that because there is a little note that I do want to mention as far as the characteristic, but that's something unlike anything else I've seen, and I think it works extremely well. I think it gives a neat silhouette to it, but additionally I think it's just very tastefully incorporated. Shifting over to the crown side, you can see that there's no traditional crown guard. However, it does have in the milling, it's broken up where it has that flat portion. And that I think was a good call because it actually allows to where it has a little more of a seamless kind of nesting as opposed to the concave shape where that sticks out. You can see it still has that little bit of a gap that's the undercut, and that is specifically to allow you to grab a hold of. But I think it's very well integrated, and you can see that milling carries over just broken up now. As far as the crown itself, this is actually going to be the same as the 02R, so it is again going to be 6.3 millimeters. It's what I would describe as kind of like a tire shape to that. You can see it is somewhat symmetrical curve to that overall, so not really an onion, but kind of a tire design. It does have very subtle and shallow partial coin edge to that, and it actually gives plenty of grip as well. Being a manual wind, it is a push-pull for that. And then you can see it does have what I believe is a red enamel paint, so that gives you that red dot, which really ties in nicely with the sub dial. You can see that's just a perfect integration or complement there. Shifting over to the case back. The case back on this is a screw-in construction. One of the things that you're going to notice is it is extremely deeply set into the back. That is something that is noticeably different from the Aerolite. Not that that one sat real high, but this one is just very, very deeply set. It is seamlessly integrated, so you have brushing along the actual case back, then you have polishing on the exhibition, so the screw-in portion, and then you additionally have kind of like an acid etch or a bead blast that really sets off the text that's milled in around, and then of course the keyhole design that I love so much that we've seen on other Direnzos as well. So I think it's just a gorgeous case back overall as well. There will be some updates on the production version. So right now you can see that there is no printing on the crystal, and that's different than the other Direnzos we've seen in the past where they typically have their logo. That will actually carry through, meaning that this is still not going to have printing on, so that's going to be the same here. But what they're going to do is they are actually going to decorate the movement. So I did misspeak about the crystal on the in the unboxing, so do note that will still continue to be see-through. On the actual movement itself, they're going to have Geneva striping as well as the logo applied on that bridge there, so you can see right where it has that breakup in the middle. And then shifting over to the bracelet. The bracelet on this is, as I mentioned in the unboxing, going to be the exact same in most respects as the 02R, so as the Aerolite. And as we talked about for compatibility, they of course have to have a similar. So that means it's going to be 28.5 millimeters at the exterior at the top by the lugs, but then it does taper down aggressively to 18 millimeters at the butterfly clasp. This does come standard with a butterfly clasp, but we'll look at momentarily, but there is another option. At the lugs, it is a female style articulation, so it's actually set into the case kind of like an integrator would be. It's going to again have that Y-link construction going down. As you look through, it does have actually inset polished portions, which are nice not only for keeping some of the fingerprints off of that, though of course you still can pick them up being polished, but additionally I think it's just a very neat visual look on the lower leg of that Y of being inset and polished. You do have brushing then on the main links or on the head of the link, the top of the Y kind of construction there. One of the things that they did change up is this actually does have facets on the exterior of the bracelet now. So that is a polished edge cut or chamfer that has applied that was not present on the 02R. So no impact there other than it makes it a little softer. And it does change the visual look, as we'll see. This is still going to be held in with screws. So if you do need to pick up a screwdriver, I'll have one linked down in the video description. Do encourage you to grab a quality one, but easy to make changes there. On the back, there are quick release spring bars, so that makes it easy to change this out if you grab the leather as well. It's a little bit fiddly and tight to pull or to push the leather in, but actually changing the bracelet I found to be quite easy, which is definitely a welcome surprise there. As far as the articulation just as with the 02R is fantastic. You know, it has really a seamless integration all the way around. It is smooth. It drapes nicely over the wrist. Really can't complain there. Fantastic comfort. Shifting over to the clasp on this, as I mentioned, it comes standard with a butterfly clasp. It does actually have half links as well. So despite the fact that it is a butterfly clasp, you should still be able to get a pretty near perfect fit for that. And I do highly recommend the butterfly clasp. I think it integrates very nicely. It's additionally a very nice construction, though we'll talk about a caveat there as well. You can see it does have machine turning on the inside, and then of course a nice milled bridge, and it is signed on the links. Additionally, though, there is the option of a traditional double pusher fold over kind of clasp. So this is an optional version, 5 micro adjust holes. So if you find that this just doesn't work for you, you can always pick this up. This will have a hardened coating to that as well. But for me, this is definitely the way that I like to wear it. As far as the straps, we had already talked about, you know, these are a leather construction for them. They are genuine leather. They have quick release spring bars on the back. They're nicely finished. You're going to notice there's more of a texture on the light brown version. It's almost like that kind of like football pebble texture. They additionally do have signed buckles, and those are going to be polished as well. On the black, it is going to be more of a traditional slab kind of construction. Both of these, I believe I mentioned, do have quick release spring bars on the back, so those are going to be easy to change out. And overall, I think they're nice for what they are. I don't really use leather, however, that being said, these do seem to be of a very good quality, and you can see what they look like in the footage there. All right, so now that we have all that out of the way, let's go ahead and bring in some comps. One of the ones that I know has been popular request here is checking it out next to, so this is the 02R Aerolite that we've talked about a fair amount. You can see there's a fair amount of differences and similarities to these. So the overall construction, both of them of course have, semi-sandwich dials here. Both of them have very unique patterns to the sandwich dial. Both of them I think are easily recognizable and distinguished from each other, where to me, despite similarities, I think they're very different watches overall. One of the things that's neat is looking at the dials. One of the questions that came up is how do these wear for comparison. You can see the visual, to my eye at least, and I checked this out across other colors as well, but to my eye, the Aerolite I think looks like it has a larger dial. However, when I put this on calipers, the dial, as far as I can tell based on measuring the outside of the crystal, is virtually identical. The crystals themselves are slightly different, with sitting a little more proud on the Aerolite and additionally having more of a chamfer as a result of that, but the actual width of that appears to be virtually identical, so it should have about the same dial size despite the visual difference, which is interesting. Additionally, you're going to notice as far as the case shape here, with the different case shape. So first off, this one actually is, despite being a slightly smaller watch on the Wandering Star, this one actually has a roughly 2 millimeter longer lug to lug. However, visually, I think this actually looks like it has a shorter lug to lug, and that's including on the wrist. And I think that's partly owing to that kind of unique undercut that it has at the lugs. So while these two do wear very similarly, they're also quite different. You can see, to me, a more pronounced case presence for the Aerolite. Again, I do think the dial looks a little bit larger. So across the board, I think this is packaged a little bit smaller, despite the fact that the dimensions don't support that. So much of that's going to be subjective, and you're going to have to reach your own conclusions, but I'm doing the best I can here to show it. Looking at it from the side profile, you can see they have a very different overall profile. So yeah, the bezels, as you can see, are going to be similar as far as the design for it, but very different in total thickness. The same thing's true looking at that case back. You can see much taller on the Aerolite than it is for the Wandering Star, and then the case, of course, just a completely different flow and overall look to that. So that hopefully gives you a better idea as far as what these two look like, or how these two stack up next to each other. Absolutely can fit both of them in your collection, and I'm going to be happy to have them both. Here it is next to the Mondial. So this is the DRZ04, just to give you an idea there as far as kind of visual scale and presence between those two. I think relatively similar overall in terms of footprint. Then bringing in this one, I just want to bring in, this is the Solaris. And I just want to bring this DRZ05 in to give it an idea as far as a black dial, even though this is a different black dial than you're going to otherwise see on the Wandering Star. But this gives you an idea as far as that visual there. And then finally, I want to bring in a teal option. I don't think it's going to be a similar teal to this, but I expect this will get you into the ballpark. This is a Zelos Nova, but additionally, though, just looking at sizing, you can see there's a lot more presence. So despite the fact that these are actually technically similar sized watches, you can see, to my eye, there is more presence on the Wandering Star than there is on the Nova, but you can see dial and those kind of things are going to be relatively similar. All right, so hopefully that helps to give you a better idea not only of what this is like to live with, but additionally what you can expect as far as sizing and scale. So wrapping things up, let's go ahead and conclude with my personal view of the positives, some critiques or items to note there, as well as the overall summary. First, for the positives. Just like with the other Direnzos, I think this is such a thoughtful and such a gorgeous original design that this has. It's one of those things of, as we'll talk about in the conclusion, it's one of those things you're either going to potentially love it or hate it, but for me, there's no denying that this is artistic, it's fantastic. I think it looks great. So that's my personal take anyways. As far as the subdial effect, that is just mesmerizing. I really do like the mystery second. No, it's not amazing for precision legibility, but this isn't really kind of a watch you're going to wear for precision legibility anyways. But during the day or at night, I love watching that thing glide around, and that absolutely, I think, hits the mark there. So that's great. This particular version, I love the dynamic nature of the light play, the way that shifts around, the sunburst effect. Despite the fact that the milling lines for that are not super deep, they are definitely ever present. But the biggest thing is you notice as any light hits that, it just dances across that dial, and I really like that effect. Additionally, the color shift, the fact that it goes from so many different shades of green to going to more of a goldish coloration, all of those kind of things, I think it's very alluring, and I think it makes it really fun to look at. The quality, especially for being a prototype, I think is phenomenal. The mill lines are excellent. The polishing is excellent. Having the hardened coating, the overall just the construction of the watch is great. Being a prototype, there are a couple specks of dust and things like that that are present in this, but I expect that'll be cleaned up in the finalized version. And then for sizing, this of course is going to be subjective, but I think it's right in the sizing sweet spot. It's not too small for larger wristed folks because it does have that case presence, but in my opinion, I don't think it's too large for smaller wristed folks. With my 6.5-inch wrist, I think it fits just fine. I have plenty of room left before I have any overhang or anything like that. I think you could even go a little smaller and be fine, but I do think it is somewhat similar to the Aerolite, so if that one wasn't for you, this one very well may not be either, but I do think, to my eye, at least visually, that undercut does make a difference in how this wears despite actually having a longer lug to lug. The same thing's true, is it's not quite as squared off for the case presence, so it doesn't look as wide on the wrist. But what about some critiques? Some items that you need to be aware of, and this is just kind of implicit in the design, is one, for precision legibility, we already talked about with the Mystery Second, you of course don't have precision there, but additionally you might have noticed there are no hashes, so you really only have the 5-minute increments. Otherwise you're just kind of guessing of where that's at for setting the time. That can be a little bit annoying, but you can pretty well approximate, or you can just set in 5-minute increments. But that's something, if you're looking for precision legibility, this isn't it. As far as the design, I do think it keeps it cleaner for this, and it might have gotten busy if they put like little dots or something like that, but it's just something to be aware of, that is one of the natures or characteristics of this. One of the things that's interesting here is, despite the fact that this is a relatively thin watch, with the way that that flows down at the side, but most significantly with that lug undercut, it achieves something where it almost creates an illusion of thickness. So I think in some respects, despite the fact that I don't think this wears or looks thick on the wrist at all, when you're checking it out from certain angles, particularly from this lug, with that, it creates almost like the fat mirrors. It creates kind of a visual effect where I do think it tends to give the look of being a little thicker with that mirror polish and those cuts. I don't personally think it's a negative thing. I actually like the playfulness, but it's just something I observed. And then one thing that is, I expect, unique to this, because I've had other butterfly clasp, this prototype at least has a weird quirk. We'll see if we can replicate it on camera. But if I push this one shut first, the bottom, and then shut this, it'll actually pop free. And of course, now that I'm saying that, it's not going to do it. But I've had that happen numerous times with popping that, where I go to put that. Actually, I think I have it upside down. But for whatever reason, though, that just pops loose. Of course, it's not going to do it here. But I've had that happen several times, and I tested that prior to being on camera, so of course it's going to make me look like an idiot. But that being said, the butterfly clasp, I've had no issues on prior Direnzos, so I expect that's just a quirk or something that might have a burr or something on this particular one. So really a non-issue, but just something I experience, and I'm always going to be transparent with you all. As far as the overall summary, where does it leave us? At the end of the day, as I kind of alluded to at the beginning here, the style may not be for everybody, but it absolutely speaks to me. I love the Direnzo design language. I love the signature bowl. I think you get a lot of quality for the money. So across the board, I love what Direnzo's doing, and this one's no exception here. So I hope this video has been helpful for you. If you did like it, please do tap that like button. If you haven't already done so, smash that subscribe button, and thanks for watching.